Getting the smile and confidence you've been dreaming about, all from the comfort of your home, isn't a total mystery with Byte clear aligners. Just don't be surprised if all your friends start asking, "What's your secret?" Begin by ordering your at-home impression kit today for only $14.95. Byte clear aligners are doctor-directed and delivered to your door. Treatment costs thousands less than braces, plus they offer flexible financing, accept eligible insurance, and you can pay with your HSA FSA. Get 80% off your impression kit when you use code WONDERY at Byte.com. That's BYTE.com. Start your confidence journey today with Byte.
As a person with a very deep voice, I'm hired all the time for advertising campaigns. But a deep voice doesn't sell B2B, and advertising on the wrong platform doesn't sell B2B either. That's why if you're a B2B marketer, you should use LinkedIn ads. LinkedIn has the targeting capabilities to help you reach the world's largest professional audience. That's right, over 70 million decision makers all in one place. All the big wigs, then medium wigs, also small wigs who are on the path to becoming big wigs. Okay, that's enough about wigs. LinkedIn ads allows you to focus on getting your B2B message to the right people. So, does that mean you should use ads on LinkedIn instead of hiring me, the man with the deepest voice in the world? Yes. Yes, it does. Get started today and see why LinkedIn is the place to be to be. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th.
We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
And welcome back to Little Cuts, our weekly minisode where we just dig into the things that we've been watching recently. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth. This week we are talking about Hammer Horror, a 2000 slasher, a new horror film, and a found footage horror movie that desperately needs distribution.
Ooh.
I know, I'm so excited to talk about it.
I love it when you find these little random movies that...
I know. I'm very excited. I like that because then I'm like, everyone watch them, and then hopefully they
people
get people
do.
more attention.
Look at you.
I know.
Like,
it's weird. I like
you're
it.
like an influencer.
I'm my found footage horror influencer. the only one of my kind. The only influencer I ever want to be.
Well, that also means that you're the best.
Oh, I don't know about that. But
well,
anyway.
If there's no one else to compare yourself to, then you're obviously the best.
Wow. That feels weird. Whatever you say, Terry. Well, deflecting compliments, because I don't know how to take them. Can you tell me about...
Yeah, so
Tell me about things.
I will tell you about things, all the things, or at least two things. Last week I watched the Ernest R. Dickerson directed Tales from the Crypt movie, Demon Knight. And everyone kept talking about this other one that he directed called Bones from 2001, which I had never seen before, but I know a lot of people really like. And so I was like, I'm going to watch this one next. And so for those that don't know, it's the IMDb says it's 20 years after his death by a gunshot, which isn't necessarily true. Gosh, IMDb. Jimmy Bones comes back to life as a ghost to wreak revenge on those who killed him and to clean up his neighborhood. So this movie is like a haunted house movie that turns into a slasher.
Oh.
So there's this giant kind of gothic building that is in the middle of this very urban area that's falling apart and has been for 20 years. And a group of young adult entrepreneurs have purchased the building and are planning to turn it into a nightclub. The shenanigans unfold because the place has been haunted by the character of Jimmy Bones, who's played by Snoop Dogg. He's been haunting the place ever since he died in the 70s. He was like a numbers runner in the 70s, and then he ends up getting betrayed and murdered by a bunch of people who end up stabbing him. And then I guess technically he does end up getting shot, and that's what killed him. But he's been pretty much like stabbed to death up till that point as well. And now that and now that new people have moved into the building and are trying to renovate it, it of course starts to bring him back to life. And so there's hauntings, and there's some creepy stuff, and there's some like dream stuff, and it feels, I would say that the tone, it feels like it's kind of pulling from some in particular like Nightmare on Elm Street, but I would also say that it is also kind of a throwback to sort of the Universal monster movies of like there's a scene where they walk into this building, and there's like this gothic staircase, and I'm like, oh, that's really giving me like Dracula vibes from back in like the Universal days with Bela Lugosi. And it's definitely aping that kind of gothic meets urban feel to it that I really liked. I do think it kind of takes a little bit too long to get to the slasher part, and then the slasher is like the last, I would say the events leading up to the third act are sort of like boom, 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 because he kind of gets rebirthed and goes after the people that wronged him. So I don't think it completely works for me, but I really enjoyed it, and the visual artistry on display by Ernest is phenomenal. Snoop puts in a good performance.
I was gonna say, what's it like seeing Snoop Dogg in that kind of role?
Understated. I mean, he has that kind of like chill personality, and he's, when he comes back as a ghost, he is kind of a wide brim hat and like a black trench coat that kind of gives him a gothic cape like feel to it. So he's kind of good in it. Pam Grier's in it, and I love her. Always
good, forever.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed this. I don't think it's as good as Demon Knight. I'm really upset though, because I would have loved to have seen this turn into a franchise.
Oh, that would be so cool. Just the pictures, like the screen stills from the film look really cool.
Yeah, there's this one scene where there's like a wall turns into almost that that scene in Nightmare on Elm Street where, well, I think it's number 4, where Freddy rips off his shirt, and he has like all the bodies like pressed against, and they're trying to.
Yes.
There's a scene that's like a wall and it's all kind of filmed in sort of grays and blacks of people trying to like pull out of the wall, and it has that very latexy sort of creepy, weird feel to it that I'm like, it's almost reminding me of like H.R. Geiger meets like Pinhead goopiness, and I'm like, give me more of that. I loved that.
Cool. Okay.
And it's filmed really well because the DOP was Martinez Labiano, who also shot The Shallows. It has a very stylish feel to it. So the story I don't think completely worked for me, but all the visual trickery on display and a lot of the practical effects and just really, really stood out to me. So I really liked that one. And that was Bones from 2001.
That sounds awesome. Okay, thank you for putting those both on my list, putting them back up on my list to watch, because I do want to watch these. Oh, I think I've seen a cover of Bones before, and I was like, I saw Snoop Dogg and Bones, and it's terrible. And he was like, Snoop Dogg, that must just be a stoner horror movie, which is terrible, and I shouldn't have assumed that. So
I probably had a similar assumption. I was like, Snoop Dogg in a movie. I honestly probably just discounted it because I'm like, he's a singer, not a movie person, not an actor. Which, I mean, if you see the number of people that cross over from the two, it's a really stupid thing to think. But that's probably what 20-year-old Terry would have thought, I think, at that time.
Yeah, fair. That was probably what young me thought when I saw the cover.
But it's good.
Cool.
So tell me about this found footage movie, though.
Okay, so her name is So this is Michelle Nezek's found footage film from 2016, O Unilateralis. And so Michelle Nezek on Twitter, she is at M_NESSK. She is, she's an actress, a writer, producer. She does a lot of stuff in the horror community, but she made this film, O Unilateralis, which is both a creepy horror movie and a really interesting critique on rape culture.
Oh.
So basically, two of my favorite things put into a found footage movie. I was lucky enough that she sent me a link. So this hasn't gotten distribution yet. It hasn't been released anywhere yet, but she's working on it. But I just wanted to put it out there because I want more people to know about it and have more demand for it. So people so she can have more backup in getting this film distributed, because it's really, really good. These two guy friends go on a camping trip to make a movie, and they bring along this new girl from their school. They're in college. This new girl who is she's very sheltered, came from a very Catholic family, and so she's kind of going out on her own for the first time, and she's never drank or smoked weed, and so they're going on this journey, and it's this very weird tension between the two male friends and her, and it's this very uncomfortable, one of the guys is really nice to her, the other one is kind of hitting on her but trying to be funny, and it's this very awkward, really awful tension, which is the point. And then in the background there's a zombie thing going on, and it's the zombie part is very understated, and I loved that. I think people who see it might be oh, I thought this was going to be a zombie movie, there's not a lot of zombies in it, but it's supposed to take it basically takes the back seat to this actual story about the way that men try to groom women. And I absolutely loved it. I think it's a found footage movie that really pushes what you expect from found footage. And, so there are not very many found footage films directed by women. So again, it's very nice to see that. It's a hard film to watch, but in a way, in a kind of, not in a gore way, but in a what's coming kind of way. And it makes you feel a little sick because you're watching it from the guy's perspective. And so it really takes that idea of the male gaze and really implicates you in it.
Right.
In a really important but really uncomfortable way. It's nauseating to think about what it means to be in his subject position when he is not a very good person.
That's interesting, because I think that is one of the powers of found footage, is by putting you in that cameraman's perspective. And
yeah, exactly.
So that does sound really uncomfortable.
It is really uncomfortable, and it's going to be one of those movies that people are going to watch and be there wasn't any gore in it. This is so annoying. It's so woke. And I'm going to be fuck you. There's so many other movies that you can watch. These are the kind of films that you want to see, experimenting with that form. People can make a found footage movie, but it'll just be the same one we've seen all the time. It's going to be Paranormal Activity, variant, Grave Encounters, which is fine. But I also love that, women behind the camera are using that format to make something important with a message. And I think that's what, evolving genres are for. So
Absolutely.
O Unilateralis, I'll make sure to spell it out in the description of the podcast so you can get that. But that is, it's not, you can't find it anywhere yet, but I'm going to make sure it does find somewhere. I swear to it, I will make sure.
This might be a good place to, we did get an email from Jazzy, at Jazzy John, with a question about kind of rape revenge films in a way. Specifically about them. And he wrote and said that while we were making our wrong turns through Giallo Land, he was diving into a different rabbit hole, the Japanese female prisoner scorpion movies of the early 70s. Have you ever seen those, Mary Beth?
I actually haven't.
Okay, I haven't either. And he says that rape revenge films are always a touchy subject, but he just wanted to know where we draw the line between a necessary plot device and just outright gross exploitation. And he says because he's torn, because he feels these movies definitely cross that line, but they have a really cool moments that even dip into the supernatural. And he says that when Scorpion dons her iconic hat and trench coat and starts serving looks and stabbing fools, it's so damn cool. And I think that's a good question. I don't know if I don't really have any thoughts on it personally.
Yeah. So I'm going to answer this question without having seen those movies. So I hope that it's going to be like a relevant response, because it sounds like this Japanese female prisoner scorpion movies, it seems like they're probably in a similar vein of like a Video Nasties and the, you know, I Spit on Your Grave, just in the terms of topics and like being exploitation, and also so the thing that is with rape revenge is that it's a deeply personal subgenre. So not every, and I'm talking about this in the perspective of survivors, like this is me coming from that perspective, because like not everyone is going to be comfortable with these movies. They are very intense, they are very violent, they are very uncomfortable. And particularly with survivors, there are some of us like me who really like these movies and like to watch them to kind of understand how rape culture has been addressed throughout the decades, and some people fucking hate them for very valid reasons. So for me, in drawing the line, what that line is, so for me, the big indicator about if a rape revenge movie is just trying to be spectacle versus trying to really tell us like a more nuanced story is the length of the rape scenes and the intensity of the rape scenes. Because in films like MFA, it's by Natalia Lee, that rape scene is very intense, but you're focused on her the whole time. In the movie Holiday by Isabel Eckloff, the rape scenes really it's not graphic, but it's shot from a very cold, neutral camera for a reason. So like the ways they're shot makes sense. And then there's I Spit on Your Grave, where it's just like half the movie is her getting raped on a rock in the middle of the woods and getting torn apart in her house and her book getting ripped apart. And so to me, while I do like I don't hate that I Spit on Your Grave, like I do enjoy that movie, but that to me with that it's extensive, long torture, that's when it becomes just spectacle to me rather than something else. Because sure, the character might be badass when she like puts on her hat, and you know it's there. And again, like you don't have to hate, you don't have to like every part of it. Like you can be like this part fucking sucks, but it's really cool when she gets her revenge. And so it's a there's no easy answer to this question. I know I'm rambling. There's no easy answer, but I think it's important. Like you brought this like in the email, bringing up that like, you know, there's parts that make me uncomfortable and parts that I like. I think leaning into that kind of those feelings and navigating them is important when watching exploitation films. Like you can still like exploitation films and think they're gross and be able to kind of parse out why they're gross to you, but still enjoy them. Like I like exploitation films.
Yeah.
Are they problematic? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But like they're also fascinating. And that's why I like watching these things, because it's really interesting to see how they've evolved over the years. Like I wrote a piece for The Bite this week about female directors in exploitation films and how like Doris Wishman was making films within this genre. And like it depends. But basically the short answer is if your rape scene is just like gratuitous for the sake of being gratuitous, then it's going to make me feel really uncomfortable. That's kind of where I draw the line in how they filmed the rape scene. The TLDR of my very long-winded answer.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the other thing I think is that it's important to, I think, look back at those films, understanding the time, but also understanding how a lot of films we see today are either in response to them or they exist because those films existed at one point. And so while I am not personally into those type of movies, you can see like a direct line of influence from something like that leading up to, say, Revenge, which is an exploitation film, but does it in such a interesting way that is definitely like a response to those films, I think.
Exactly. And I think that's important to look at. Like there are exploitation films being made today, but they don't look the same. And that's what's really fucking cool. Like, you know, it's not going to be the typical like grindhouse exploitation film that you're used to seeing, but like Revenge is still an exploitation film. Like this film, like you could even make an argument for like Violation and Rose Plays Julie, which are two very subdued rape revenge movies, can be considered exploitation because they handle those subjects, but they have evolved in how they handle those subjects and changed what it means to make exploitation cinema. So I think exploitation cinema it's good. It exists. It's changed into something different now, and it's changing into something it's becoming empowering and is changing gazes, which I think is so fucking cool, and why I love horror movies and why I love women, because I think exploitation is now in our hands, and by ours I mean like people who identify as women like it's kind of more an our court, and we can kind of tell these stories from a much more nuanced perspective while also still making gross, uncomfortable movies.
But I'll also say she does look really badass. I don't know if you saw the pictures.
She does look very badass. So the movie, the title of the movie, the first one is Female Prisoner Number 701, Scorpion. Okay, so that's the first one it looks like, and then there's a bunch of sequels. So it looks badass.
She looks like
I want to watch it.
I love her style.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like a lot of these women are badass. Like, yeah, they're treated like shit, and it's important to interrogate that, but also they do have these really cool, empowering moments. So it's an interesting kind of like line to walk. But again, everyone has a different experience with these movies. Like, and that's the joy of it. Like, you can love them or you can hate them, and it's not really anyone's business as long as you're not being a dick about it.
There you go.
That's what I just go for everything. Like, you can like it or hate it, just don't be a dick.
Yeah.
So.
Well,
Yeah, I could talk about this forever, as you could tell. I should shock no one. Yeah, thanks for that email. I like when you guys send us questions like this. It's fun to like talk about it, and yeah. So moving on from that, Terry, what's this new horror movie you want to talk about?
So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it because I really want to talk about our Hammer horror. I just want to kind of throw it out there that there's a new movie that is out today. It's called Son.
Like in the sky, or like your
As
son?
As in my son, S-O-N.
Okay.
My son is, I don't have a son, people, so don't.
Yeah. My son.
But as in S-O-N. And it is about a woman who has escaped about 8 years before the movie started, she escaped a cult, and she was pregnant. And she gives birth to the kid in a car as she is trying to escape them. And then it cuts to 8 years later. The kid is now 8 years old, and she has moved into another location. You're uncertain whether she remembers the whole thing or whether it's been blocked from her memory. Her son starts to get this weird... Well, first there's this really creepy scene one night where she's like in bed, and she thinks she hears her son walking down the hallway, and she calls to him. He doesn't answer, so she goes, opens up his door, and his room is full of people that are staring at her. Yes. And then the door slams in her face. She can't get in. She runs across the street to her neighbor. She's panicking, telling her to call the cops. She runs back upstairs. The door is open. Her son is now lying in bed, and there's no one else in the room. And, of course, the cops don't believe her. And then he starts to have these epileptic fits. He gets taken to the hospital. His skin is, like, breaking out into some, like, really weird bruising patterns. And he kind of gets an appetite for human flesh.
No fucking way.
Then the cult starts to show up again, and so she ends up going on a run with her son to escape them. This movie's not great.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh.
And that's why I don't really want to spend too much time on it, but it is good. I enjoyed it. I do think that it sort of plays a little too heavily on the is she crazy or isn't she crazy aspect of the movie. And honestly, a lot of it is predictable. Like, I knew exactly where it was going the moment characters were introduced and what was happening, except there's a couple moments that aren't. But the relationship between the mother and the son actually, like, really saved this movie, because she is so desperate to save her son. No one believes her. And she's also dealing with a kid that is now desiring human flesh. And so that dynamic is really interesting to me. And it really picked up some of the areas that weren't so interesting to me, like Emile Hirsch playing a cop that's, like, fallen in love with her after meeting her one night. So there's like
the usual.
Yeah, and I mean they explain some of it, and it makes sense in the end. But like, it's not great, but it is out there. And if you are looking for kind of a gory little take on, I would compare it to like a more serious Eli in some ways. More serious. but
Okay.
not the
Okay.
camp classic that was.
Camp classic, Eli.
I think there's enough here that I give it a slight recommend.
Okay, cool. He also directed The Canal, if anyone has seen that, about the guy whose wife disappears and he gets obsessed with the canal. It's actually pretty decent.
Is it?
Yeah.
Like, this is shot really well. It's acted really well. The story to me just hits way too many.
Yeah, his writing's a little bit cliche.
Cliche is a good way of describing the writing in this. Yeah, I would say so. But it's very visually well done, and there's some really good gore gags in it, I would say.
Cool. That sounds great. So, it's our first week of talking about Hammer horror.
It sure is.
What film did we watch for today, Terry?
We watched Horror of Dracula, which I had not seen in
Oh my God.
somewhere over 30 years. And
I had never seen it ever.
I really want to hear what you thought, but I will say that, we've talked before about how we've seen movies and we may not have seen them in a long time, and then a score comes in, or there's like an image, or there's something, and it just brings you right back. Well, the moment this movie starts, and it has this bombastic score, and it's like this image of this gargoyle, and then there's the red letterings, and it's just this the score in this movie is so fucking good. But let me tell you, it brought me back to being like I don't know how old I was, 6, 7, somewhere around there, year old kid sitting in front of my TV, just like enraptured with this movie. James Bernard, composer, fantastic. I loved it. But I want to know what you thought, Mary Beth.
So I love vampires and I love Dracula. Dracula is a story that I am obsessed with. I read it when I was younger, and I just love all variations of the story. And this is another testament to how many fucking times you've seen a story. It can be done in so beautifully and so differently. So my favorite version of Dracula is Bram Stoker's Dracula by Francis Ford Coppola with that epic craziness. This one is so close though. Like, it's much more, obviously a little less intense than that one. But Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, like, I had not seen this movie. I'd heard about them. I knew about their chemistry. Christopher Lee is everything to me. Him as Dracula is so good. He oozes that like sexuality, but like in a much more subtle way than Gary Oldman's character. When he goes from like old as hell to real sexy, and he oozes that charisma. But so does Peter Cushing as Van Helsing with his furry collar and his jacket. Like, they're both just two very like charismatic people, and them together is just so explosive to watch. And the settings are gorgeous. Like, these movies, like these Hammer horror, I've only seen one other Hammer horror movie, and the way they design these gothic castles, and they have them like these ornate decorations and draperies and paintings, it's just so delicious to watch and see and to take it in. Like, you're just drinking up every inch of it. And that's how I also felt with this movie, and I just really liked it.
There was two things. Well, there's one thing I really remembered, and there's one thing that surprised me on this rewatch. And the first one is when Jonathan Harker, he's there, and then it's revealed early on that he actually is there to kill Dracula.
Yes, I know. I was very excited. I was like, oh, we got some twists. We got some little twists here. Like, this isn't like he's a lawyer that came there, like, to help him with his books. I was like, oh, I love the changes. I was very excited about that.
And some of the changes are done because it had a very small budget and they couldn't really shoot in a lot of places. So it exercises like a bunch of stuff from the book, with like the trip across the sea and all of that kind of stuff. That's gone. Everything is very close proximity to this castle, it feels like. But I don't mind it, and I love that it's doing something different with the story. That's not telling the same old story of Dracula that we got in Universal.
Well, yeah, and I know that they couldn't call this Dracula because of the Bela Lugosi 1931 film, so they had to change it to the name a little bit because of that.
Yeah, here in the U.S. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in the U.S. And so, but I liked like the subtle changes, like Jonathan's married to Lucy and Mina is his sister-in-law. Like, things that aren't like a huge change, but it is kind of cool to see that little twist on it. Especially with Lucy and how Lucy's story goes. Like, because Lucy's story mimics how her story goes in the book, but is in a different context. And I thought that was really interesting and a little bit more tragic too than what happens to Mina, Jonathan Harker's fiance, in the books.
I was also surprised to realize after, because didn't really think about this before, that this movie came out in 1958, and this movie oozes sex.
It oozes sex.
There is a lot
really
of.
Does.
It's not heaving bosoms and stuff like that, but it is definitely giving you like, oh, she just had sex. Like this is erotic. This is when Dracula. Oh my God, when Dracula first interrupts the vampire that's going to bite, that does bite Jonathan Harker, and the look in his eyes, it's like he's gone from this very well composed man to this. His eyes are bloodshot. There's blood on his teeth, and he just looks like a deranged monster. I was like, oh, I love that. But then,
oh my God, yes, it's so good.
And then it goes later to like Lucy, that's like looking with this look of excitement and fear in bed, that she's like, she's gonna get it on, is basically the inference of what's happening in this.
Well, yeah, like she like gets out of bed in like her diaphanous nightgown, and she opens the windows, and it's like, oh, she's preparing for her booty call.
Yeah, she lays herself down in her bed. It's like,
yes!
I am ready to be ravished.
It's so fascinating, like the ways that sex is injected in these movies without it being like overtly in scare quotes sex. But watching it now, you're like,
Oh,
very sexy.
I see what you're doing here, 1958. Plus, there's a lot of things from here that I think you can see influencing vampire cinema from there, because I believe that this is Lucy's staking scene, I want to say, is a direct influence on Fright Night with gosh, what is his name? Peter Vincent, when he has like one of his movies that's showing in the background, and he's like staking a vampire in the coffin, and blood just keeps like splatting in his face. Like that is taking this scene to an nth degree. And of course, there's Peter Vincent. It's pulling in Peter Cushing and Vincent Price. His name is, Portmanteau. It's a combination. It's a combination of those two names.
Portmanteau.
There you go. But yeah, 1958. Giving us sex, giving us violence, giving us burned heads with crosses on it.
Yeah. Oh, and the one thing I wanted to note was the effects at the end when he defeats Dracula was actually pretty good. I mean, for 1958, like the time lapse of his body like falling apart, that was pretty impressive. Like that final confrontation.
Yeah, and there's also a scene that it wasn't in the cut that I saw. I think some cuts have put it in. It was cut out. It was censored originally, where they had put some kind of like clay or something on Dracula's face, and there's actually a scene of him like pulling down his flesh and there's like a red layer underneath it. So like and I think it got cut out of because of obviously censorship, and I think there might be a version of it that has that put back in. Mine did not have it, but yeah, that the effects of his aging, his like rapid aging, are I think really good for, especially considering 1950s.
Yeah, it was very impressive. Also, Hammer Red blood is just like the perfect color.
Oh, it's so cool.
It's the perfect color. That about wraps up this week's Little Cuts. But before we end, Terry, who are we talking to on Monday, and what Hammer horror film are we talking about next?
Okay, so on Monday, our Monday's episode is going to be our chat from October's Frightening Ass Film Festival.
So yay!
With Natasha Kermani, the director of Lucky, which is currently streaming on Shudder. So if you missed us at the festival, you won't be able to see us, of course, but you'll be able to listen to our voices.
So exciting. We're so glad. And we're talking to her about The Strangers.
We are.
Oh my God. My dream. It was such a good conversation. And I'm so glad that we are finally able to share this with you, because that was such a fun conversation. You won't be able to see my Strangers t-shirt and how Terry put the Strangers poster in his background, but just envision that while we're talking.
Yes, please. Please do. And I'm currently editing right now, and it's good. It's a really good episode. So I'm really looking forward to you guys hearing it.
It was forever ago, and also not forever ago.
I know. I mean, we've had new mics since then. Like, things have changed since that episode.
A little bit, But yeah, it is really good. So I'm excited for that one.
And then what are we doing for Little Cuts?
We are doing the Hammer horror film Die, Die, My Darling, which has been recommended by quite a few people. And I laughed at the name when I first saw it, and apparently it is good. So we're going to watch that one next.
Heck yeah.
Heck yes.
When we were looking through the recommendations, that one popped up an awful lot. And I mean, just that title, it's giving me like, it's bringing me back to our Giallo, just these fantastic titles. So
I love it. Exactly. So listeners, you have heard from us, but we want to hear from you. Have you watched a film that we talked about this week and have any thoughts? Do you have suggestions for movies we should talk about? Do you have some questions for us that you want us to discuss? You can send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us directly on Twitter. I am at MB McAndrews.
And I'm at Gailey Dreadful.
And of course, keep the conversation going by chatting with us on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe.
Thank you, Eric Power, for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Please stay safe out there. But most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.
Oh, won't somebody please think of the children? Won't somebody please think of the children? Somebody please think of the children!
As a person with a very deep voice, I'm hired all the time for advertising campaigns. But a deep voice doesn't sell B2B, and advertising on the wrong platform doesn't sell B2B either. That's why if you're a B2B marketer, you should use LinkedIn ads. LinkedIn has the targeting capabilities to help you reach the world's largest professional audience. That's right, over 70 million decision makers all in one place. All the big wigs, then medium wigs, also small wigs who are on the path to becoming big wigs. Okay, that's enough about wigs. LinkedIn ads allows you to focus on getting your B2B message to the right people. So, does that mean you should use ads on LinkedIn instead of hiring me, the man with the deepest voice in the world? Yes. Yes, it does. Get started today and see why LinkedIn is the place to be to be. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room?
It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together, we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th. We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.